David Fincher's Seven is one of the most iconic thrillers of the 1990s, a tightly wound exercise in gut-wrenching suspense anchored by excellent performances from Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and indeed Kevin Spacey. But above even its unsentimental approach to violence and grimly haunting ending, Seven is one of the most atmospheric films of its genre ever made, and a big part of the reason for that is Fincher's incredible job of building a realistic yet deeply unsettling world for these characters to inhabit. Now, in recent years, there's been a fan theory that's grown considerably in popularity online that the city depicted in Seven is effectively a pre-Batman Gotham City. Now, there aren't any direct indicators of Easter eggs in the film that suggest that Fincher was consciously attempting to convey this, but in examining the film's tone and aesthetic, not to mention some neat coincidences between Seven and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight saga, it's a theory that slots together quite effortlessly. Plus, with Matt Reeves' upcoming The Batman pulling more than a little inspiration from Fincher's work, both tonally and stylistically, the theory itself actually starts to feel even more apt than it may have already done to begin with. And when you think about it, Seven's story could even be a plot lifted from Gotham Central. And so whether you consider Seven as a tangential companion piece to Batman media or a more direct prequel of sorts to Nolan's films, it doesn't take much fudging at all to make the properties come together in a satisfying and, more importantly, fun way. So let's take a look at them. Within Seven, the viewer is never expressly told which city they are in. The characters never reference their location, and through clever cuts, Fincher is able to turn the shooting location of Los Angeles into a formless yet recognizable metropolis that exists without a single shot confirming its identity. We don't even get a clear look at Detective Mills or Somerset's badges to even hint at where the story might be taking place. Clearly, this was an intentional flourish on Fincher's part and creates a stage for the film which displaces the audience and focuses instead on the concept of generic urban rot, something that Gotham exemplifies to the nth degree. But I know what you're thinking, this is hardly concrete evidence, and you're totally right. However, it allows us the ability to look at this city as being so removed from reality that it can slide closer to a fictional setting. Now let's turn to the antagonist, Kevin Spacey's John Doe, which is quintessentially a Batman villain in all but name. Much like Victor Zsasz, the Calendar Man, and the Riddler, John Doe sets up situations and murders based around a gimmick that has clearly consumed his life. In this case, Doe murders 7 people, each based around the 7 deadly sins. It's theatrical, it's flamboyant, and it could easily sit in the pages of a Batman comic. It almost sits at odds with the stylistic tones of the rest of the film. Everything else is gritty and dark, but these murders are inexplicably complex and would require the type of planning that only the likes of the Joker and the Riddler would ever dream of pulling off. Plus, there's the fact that he leaves clues at all the crime scenes and the notebooks that are filled to the brim with his psychotic ramblings. Plus, that ending, doesn't that just scream of comparisons to The Killing Joke, of a person who has pushed the hero to beyond any reasonable limit? Doe is a figure that's risen beyond a mere criminal to become a figure of fear. He's haunting the actions of our detectives and also the city itself. A supervillain, if ever there was one. And the worst thing is that he's not alone. When rewatching Seven, it becomes clear just how expertly Fincher employs world building to create a palpable atmosphere of toxic dread. This is a city dying in front of us, thanks to corruption eating from within at every level. Crimes can be frequently heard going on outside both Mills and Somerset's apartments. Somerset drives past a dead body on the sidewalk at one point and even tells a grim story where a man got robbed the night before, only to be additionally stabbed in both eyes by the attacker for no reason. But perhaps the most Batman-inspired crime comes in the form of the rampant corruption implied in the city's police force. Somerset tells Mills that the press frequently bribes the police to get crime scene tip-offs, and at the end of the film, it's suggested that John Doe used similar means to find out Mills's address and murder his wife. Also, there is a massive coincidence, but one that does further the idea somewhat, and that is, just look at who plays the corrupt FBI agent in Seven and also in Batman Begins. Mark Boone Jr. Now I know it's a sheer coincidence, but this ideal of corruption is so similar that both directors saw this actor as reflective of the ills affecting their created societies. However, he's clearly not the only actor who shared time with both Fincher and with Nolan, as it's now time to look at the character of Detective Somerset, aka Morgan Freeman. Somerset is a cop that's been on the job for a long time, and while it would be a massive stretch to say that he's going to become Lucius Fox in the Batman series at a later date, there is a similarity in their personalities. Both are interested in deep diving for information, both are resourceful and engaged in using whatever means they can in the hunt for justice, and both essentially believe that this world can be saved if the few good men and women left fight for what is right. This is confirmed by his terrific closing narration that for all of the world's ugliness, it's still worth fighting for. Then there's the implications of privacy, which are central to the figures of Somerset and Fox. Both are shown to hold massive insights into people's personal lives. Somerset with the ability to check what books people have been checking out in the library, and the entire Dark Knight subplot with Lucius and the monitoring devices. It's interesting, right? But before we close out, let's just go from people who are trying to pull their city out of the toilet and return to the nameless city one more time and look at it a little bit closer. As on paper, there's an argument to be made that Fincher's city feels more like Gotham than it does in even the Nolan Batman films. In Nolan's trilogy, we began with some interesting ideas, but they were soon put out to pasture in favour of a more generic American metropolis by the third film. The concept of the Waynes creating a transportation system was a good one, but was removed for obvious reasons come the sequels. Cross this with the city presented in Se7en, and we see a city teeming with crime and filth. And we don't get to see mansions and secret lives of the rich and famous. We get grotty apartments, streets that sweat with a disgusting layer of grime. We get to see a frustration of inequality that Gotham totally represents. In purely aesthetic terms, Se7en City is constantly raining, a Gotham hallmark if ever there was one, and the various crime scenes are shot in dingy low light, which again emphasises the ugliness of the act, and honestly just makes the viewer want to take a shower. Especially telling is the memorable foot chase between Mills and John Doe, for when the chase reaches a winding alleyway, it's easy to imagine this being the very same alley where the Waynes were gunned down in cold blood. Gotham is a city where it's perpetually on the brink, and Fincher's city is the perfect adaptation of that. With a rogues gallery already establishing itself and the likes of those that are affected by John Doe's actions as much as the man himself, who's to say that this city wouldn't need saving at some point by a fella with a penchant for pointy ears? Now I know I've not provided any hard evidence for these thoughts, and in essence this is like a fantasy booking of sorts, but my god, could you imagine the worlds of Fincher and Nolan colliding in this manner? A dark and corrupt city, a ruthless murderer, and those willing to step up to save it. It all could act like a Batman Year 1, but almost a Year 0 to those events. And there we go, those were our thoughts on how David Fincher's Se7en and Christopher Nolan's Batman could technically be linked. I know that it's just a bit of fun, but if you enjoyed this, please let me know down in the comments section below. And if you've got any burning film theories that you'd like to share, then please get in touch. Either drop the messages down in the comments section, or you can get in touch with me over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you could email us those amazing thoughts. Until then, I've been Jules, you've been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.